Good morning, everyone. Appreciate you being here with us this morning. This is our regular December workshop of the Scott County Fiscal Court. I would like to ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Let us pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We're going to start our workshop today with a moment of silence and recognition of service for our friend and fellow magistrate, Bill Burke. On Saturday, November 27th, Bill, loving husband, father of two, passed away at the age of 66. He was preceded in death by his father, Dr. Winston Burke, mother Jane Probst, and brother Robert Burke. He was married 44 years to his wife, Marilyn Heckler Burke. Together they had raised a daughter, Autumn, a son, William, and their spouses. They have three grandchildren. He's also survived by John Burke, his brother John Burke, his sister Jan Steele, and brother-in-law and sister-in-law, and several nieces, nephews, and cousins. Bill was a retired Sergeant Major Army Reserve veteran of 26 years, a two-term Scott County Magistrate serving since 2015, and 3 years on the Foundation for Affordable Housing in Lexington, Kentucky, and the Scott County Water Board. He served for 4 years. He loves sports, fishing, riding, motorcycles, helping people in the community, and telling a good tale. We will all say that too. Funeral arrangements for Bill will be at Kerr Brothers Funeral Home, 3421 Harrodsburg Road, Lexington, Kentucky. His visitation will be held Sunday, December 5th, 3 to 8 at Kerr Brothers, and then funeral services will be Monday, December 6th, 12 to noon, and he'll be laid to rest at Camp Nelson National Cemetery in Nicholasville, Kentucky. In lieu of flowers, please make donation to the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation. We all love Bill. Bill was one of a kind, and I will remember his quick wit and his stories, and appreciate his service. If anyone else would like to share anything, be happy to share this time to do so. He'll be sorely missed, that's for sure.
Hey, Judge, I knew Bill a little bit before we got on the court together, and we got on at the same time, but I really got to know him a lot since, when we got on the court, and his unique background is varied, especially with his military background as well. I learned a lot from Bill, and he brought a lot of different perspectives that I don't think of to a lot of various issues that the court's dealt with, and I think that'll be sorely missed.
Rick,
he was a good guy.
No, appreciate you sharing that very much.
You were talking about knowing him before being on court. That was, I know, through the meetings and stuff with the Republican Party and stuff. He was extremely passionate, and as you can imagine, he and I went head-to-head a lot before we got on the court and never really knew each other.
I can't imagine that.
Because, we never really knew each other because we went head-to-head on things that we might not agree on. And when he got on the court, we found out we agreed on more than we disagreed on because we spent more time together and talked. And I think he was an example of what we need today. He's passionate, he was strong, but you get past that I don't want to call it a facade because there was nothing fake about it, but you get past that first layer of Bill, and he had the biggest heart that you could find.
No doubt.
He was very passionate for advocating for employees.
Mm-hmm. Very.
No doubt about that. He and I shared a little background where I worked at Tates Creek High School for 16 years early in my teaching career, Bill graduated from Tates Creek. And we would share stories. He played football. And we'd talk about Coach Walton. And those were colorful stories. Bill was an expert at using color in stories and fleshing it out, and it was always good. But when I think about Bill, I think about this, and I'm going to try to do this. This is by Theodore Roosevelt. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives violently, and who errs, and who comes short again and again, because there's no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, and who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory or defeat. And that was by Theodore Roosevelt. I think of Bill when I read that. So thank you all very much. Jeff, will you move us forward and talk about the matter of business here with employee leave?
Sure. Thank you, Judge and the court. You may recall about 2 months ago we talked about our emergency leave policy, and really was just the leave policy to help support an unvaccinated person who needs to quarantine due to a work-related exposure. I'm bringing this back to you again with the two issues that we were trying to present last time, which was to limit the leave to 1 period of quarantining, and 2, that now the rights to that emergency leave should end on December 31st. We just need to pick a date by which we're going to expire this policy. So I thought it'd be best to bring this up in a workshop, then during the meeting, just to see if there's any comments, any thoughts, any additional reflections on this. We're doing our best to manage these cases. We had a pretty good hit in August, which is why we put this in place. It has subsided some, but here within the last week or so, we've just had a couple new cases we've been dealing with too. So it's still out there. It's going to be out there, I think, for the long term. I think with this, we don't know what this Omicron is going to bring to us. But at some point, everybody who's going to get vaccinated has been vaccinated, is my guess, and we just need to move forward. So once again, I'll just open up to any discussion you have at this time or questions you might have.
So right now, how's it being handled? Like if you have a worker down there that is, or in any part of the county, how are we determining who quarantines and who doesn't quarantine?
Well, if a person's been vaccinated, they don't need to quarantine. They would just need to wear a mask and get tested after. Right now, they're recommending 7 days, believe it or not. With this, it's a Delta Plus variant that we're dealing with right now. So that's what you would do. They would continue working. An unvaccinated person would need a quarantine.
So, okay. So I guess secondary exposure. So you got your primary person that has COVID confirmed. Mm-hmm. The folks that work around them, if they're vaccinated and masked, they don't have to quarantine. If they're unvaccinated, they have to quarantine.
That's correct.
But what if they're masked?
If by chance they were masked, they wouldn't have to quarantine. An unvaccinated person would not have to quarantine. So
like in the schools right now with sports and all that. I mean,
right. So that's one level of protection. So if a
Can we
person,
do a test to stay program? Instead of sending people, schools Scott County schools are getting ready to do that, right?
Oh, we've been doing
Been doing it? I mean,
it's my understanding that they have been given special permission by WEDCO to do that. Them and Toyota are the ones I'm aware of that have gotten that permission.
It's a state program that pays for it. And, yeah, we worked with Dr. Miller, but I don't know that she couldn't stop us. Not that
Okay.
she would.
Well, maybe you know more about that than I do.
That's just it's a logistical challenge. And then, I'll give you an example. What I've read of, the shortage of the testers. Have you all had any trouble with?
At times, but for the most part, we've got somebody going, there's multiple companies out there that are on that list that you can use that you don't even have to go through. And they're able to cover my 15 buildings every morning. And so, wherever we have a school, we have a testing site.
Mm-hmm.
And for the very first part of the day, and usually within 15 to 30 minutes, they've got everybody tested and waiting on results, doing rapids, and then we do a PCR test every Thursday as a kind of just a follow-up, a little bit more efficient test or whatever. But no, it's gone really well.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of how to phrase this question.
And I think you ought to just do one site. We have to do the sites because of the kids or whatever. But
Yeah.
I think you probably run into it most specifically right here, more so than maybe the road department.
Well, the firehouse and
jail,
EMS.
Fire-
Jail.
And that's a challenge we have
One of the
too.
firehouses
Is
and set up,
Yeah.
and that's an area where we have a challenge, and perhaps even an exposure there is. And then you have they're on shift 24 hours. They're sleeping in the same quarters. Masking them up at night is just impractical.
Right. So, are we allowed to ask them if they're vaccinated or
Yes.
unvaccinated?
situations.
Okay.
I would look into it a little bit more. It cuts down on your quarantines. It cuts down, and a lot of times we're not. Like I think I had 118 kids test yesterday. I had one positive,
Okay.
and those are quarantined. Those 118 kids would have normally had to quarantine.
Yeah. What I heard, and this was just, was it Tuesday? Or was it yesterday? It was yesterday. Was it yesterday, Kara? Thank you. This has been a long week.
It's Friday.
Yeah, I know, and I appreciate
Friday,
that.
Monday,
Is when a person has public exposure, and there's maybe a situation where we're dealing with a case in an area where there is public contact or frequent public contact, is that even if we did the test to stay, they'd have to test, like you're saying, Dwayne. And then what I was told is they would have to wear the face mask, the face shield, and gloves. And every time they had contact with a new person, they'd have to change gloves, is what I was informed. So even that became a
Are
bit.
you saying I don't want to tell you much what we're not doing or doing, but we're not having to, that's not an issue for us. We're not doing any of that. As long as the kid's negative, the kid rolls on. Now he's masking during the day, but if he plays a sport, he's unmasking during his
So
time.
we'll cut to the chase. Do you all want us to look at a test to stay and see if that would be an option?
Only if it's practical.
If it's
not
practical.
practical, then absolutely
I think
not,
you get with
but-
Dr. Miller. She was very helpful in looking at it, and you can look at the different testing groups that we.
But the other thing is, recommendation is the paid leave is limited to one occasion of absence for quarantine, and then rights to emergency leave ends on December 31st. That's the recommendation.
I would still like to put that in place, yes.
at hand, and
And you would have a lot less of it, in the test to stay.
so
Right.
if we revised the policy and did the test to stay,
You're going to,
we should have better results.
So-
there might be something more specific though with first responders that,
Right.
And the issue we're running into, it's not due to patient contact, due to citizen contact, it's coworker to coworker.
Is the testing something that fire or EMS can do, or does it have to be done by a nurse?
Oh, I'm sure it had to be done by.
We'd have to
nurse.
have we have to have a third party.
You would want the testing company to do it.
Right.
Like Gravity, is that?
Mako, I think, is who we use.
So we'll do a little due diligence about the availability of that. Maybe you can help us with a couple resources on, and then we'll come back next Friday with the recommendation to revise and then additional information about the test to stay. It makes it easier to revise, I think, in your all's mind if we have the test to stay.
Well, and even if not, I mean, I know that's just a question that somebody in the public is going to ask. Why are we just sending them home? Why are we not testing this, you know, with the schools?
No,
why aren't we doing it? You know, and if it might not be practical and we don't do it. But
That's the beauty of why we have this court is to,
sometimes.
you know, it is.
How
So-
many people do we approximately have quarantined right now?
3, 5 right now.
5? And then in
Yeah.
the last 6 months, has it been about that or? been-
No, I'd say over the last, especially since, we thought we were out of the woods, you know, in July and August. I'm sure everybody did.
Right.
And then it didn't turn out that way. There was one occasion when we had to quarantine almost half of a department. And if that happens, for example, let's say a department in its snow season, and you need to be shoveling snow, get up snow off the roads, and you cannot have half your department quarantined, like the road department, and you know, make sure we have safe roads.
Especially when they're not positive. You know,
Right, yeah, no, there's
that's where
quarantining.
the test to stay
Yeah.
will help you
Mhm.
maintain that. I mean, and there's inaccuracies, I mean, with the testing at times.
Yeah.
And personally too, I mean, if you just tell somebody you got to go home and quarantine for this period of time, and then they go home and, you know, they're in the situation where, well, I might need to stay away from my family, I might need to cancel this and that, and it just disrupts their personal life as well.
Because when a person's truly quarantining, you're supposed to go home. You don't go to Lowe's. You don't go to the grocery store. You don't go to the drugstore.
Do
You
any of that.
stay home. And so if we're going to provide this leave to people, that should be an expectation too,
Sure.
Right.
you know.
So we'll,
How do you police all that?
You don't.
It's on the honor
Exactly.
system, I would hope.
Right.
You know, that people just do the right thing.
Well, so when you're saying it's going to end, if that's what the court decides, in, what was it, December 31st?
Correct.
I guess I don't even know how to ask the question. If it's a workplace exposure, that's what we're dealing with, right? Or I
Right.
think it's a workplace exposure. So that means somebody in the workplace has tested positive,
That's correct.
that they've been around. So is it considered, or does it matter whether that person has been vaccinated? Is that even part of the consideration?
No.
On the positive case?
On the positive case, no.
Positive, you got to.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I get that, but
They would use the sick leave that we provide to them.
Yeah, but if the exposed person was vaccinated, that you were saying they would only have to mask up and they could continue to work, they wouldn't have to quarantine, is that correct?
No, not, like, okay, so
The
it's not
exposed-
not a positive case, an
Right.
exposed, yes, an exposed person, all they need to do, you're right, is mask up.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, they can continue to work.
yeah, but going to David's point, so the exposed person is, somebody has tested positive, and they
Yes.
were exposed to it. Maybe 4 or 5 people were exposed
Yes.
to that individual that tested positive. I guess my point is, I know a number of people, in fact, some really close friends of mine, fully vaccinated with the booster, that were on their deathbed with COVID in this county. And so my point is, what are we accomplishing when it's possible that they were exposed by somebody that's fully vaccinated and got COVID? I've been exposed. Fortunately, nothing ever happened, but I've been exposed to a fully vaccinated person who came down with COVID recently, in the last 2 months, about 2 months ago. So it was about 2 months ago. But I didn't find it out until it was already over, you know, before I ever heard about it. And they had a mild case, fortunately. That was very fortunate, but
Okay.
I'm
I
just,
see what you're
I'm just
saying,
trying
but
to get,
That rule is not our rule, that's the Wetco rule.
I know, but I get
I know.
I get where it's coming from, but I'm sorry, it just makes no sense to me. I understand what we're trying to accomplish, and I actually agree with that. I don't want to send people home. I like David and Dwayne's thoughts on, because they are doing that at the school system. I still got one child in the school system, and they are doing the test to stay, I think you call it. And so that seems to be beneficial. I'd really like that looked at, like you said, and
I don't know if this helps any, Rick, but every case I've dealt with lately, whether the person's been vaccinated or unvaccinated, they've all been symptomatic. So a person's been sick. So the simple rule is if you're sick, don't come to work.
well, that's the case. You know, the flu's
Yeah.
on the rise. I've got
Yeah.
an employee. He hasn't been to work he got sick over the Thanksgiving holiday, so I saw him last Tuesday. He's back today. It was a flu deal. Got
Yeah.
really sick and came down with it over the weekend, apparently, this Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah,
So all that's back too, but
I know.
I mean,
So-
eventually COVID is going to be, you know, we're going to go back to treating COVID like the flu, you know, and your days are your days.
I hope
and,
so.
You know, that's what we're going to get.
But
After we get
the
to-
big issue is,
So that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Right.
That
That's
kinda
what he's trying to
That
do.
kind of answers my
Yeah.
question.
We've just got to say we've got to stop.
And
Yeah.
we're not giving days at school either, COVID days. If you're positive,
we've
we don't give days.
been very generous.
We
and-
have.
And the
We're on
issue
the
is,
top here, I think.
if you've been vaccinated, then you're staying at work and carrying the load. The unvaccinated is being sent home.
Yeah.
And let's look at the test to stay and see if it's practical. But the question at hand is about the policy, and in my opinion, we got to move on sometime.
This discussion helps me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you for bringing it today.
you're welcome. And thank you for listening.
So, all right. Spectrum Broadband Project. As of yesterday, they completed walkout design for 161 miles of the project, including roughly 50 miles over the past 2 weeks, which accounts for 1,632 locations. Remember, we're serving 5351, so that's what they've got designed. What Ben Ucelis shared is that actually they're ahead of schedule and planning to start permitting process within the month. Permitting means they've got rights to get on a pole. That's the bottom line there. They have pledged every 2 weeks to share a narrative with me that they will feel like we could share with our community constituents, and that would give them insight to what's going on. And then, when they actually start, construction gets underway, they want to do a groundbreaking and a press release for that as well. So I'm just trying to give you an update of where we're at. And they're working, and I can assure you, they want to move this along because they want to connect people, because connections mean revenue. So that's where we're at. I continue to get calls from the community and emails, and it's just everybody's eager, including
I think
me.
if they would give us, the 2 week deal.
Yeah, they're going to do
and
that.
We could answer, and then
I'll share with you all. We'll put it on website, put it on Facebook. So every 2 weeks, he's going to give me kind of a little update there.
You'll get less
Yeah.
and less of that if we can communicate for you.
So 2 days ago, we were at announcement with the governor and Senator Thayer, Representative Pratt, Representative Hart was there. Kelly came down. But just wanted to share again the good news about that announcement. Essentially a $2 million, almost a little bit over $2 million to extend water lines down the new section of the new bypass. And it's also going to enhance the future fire demands of the new Scott County High School fire protection demands, the water pressure and such.
I think they're building a pump station
And
right there.
You're putting a pump station right there. Anything else you know additionally about it, Dwayne?
I think it will then connect them on down the line. I think there's connection on one side, but not on the other right now.
Yeah.
So that's a lot.
But $2 million for that very, it's a real need. And then along the lines of what Dr. Wallace brought up last week about having a plan on our ARPA, and I think Alvin had shared the same sentiment. I think could this court help consider water projects that are out in the county that are much needed that we could use ARPA dollars for? And the number one priority in my mind, and I would like Chase Azevedo to share, is an elevated storage tank in the Ironworks Road area. That's been well documented that we don't have good pressure in that area, and it would enhance the drinking water aspect as well, availability, good pressure, but also the fire protection in that area. And I think Chase Azevedo would share with the court, that if we consider doing that and contributing ARPA dollars to that, I think it'd be a good consideration. Then we need to look holistically. Are there any other projects that might benefit as well? But I do think there's a great benefit of putting a plan together and laying it out there, and then getting some feedback from the community as well. So I am working on that as we speak.
Well, along that, when Chase is here, could we also have Joe here and talk about some of the subdivisions that are coming out in the county that that we may or may not be aware of? Some of them could have been dormant as far as plans for a long time, and then all of a sudden they pop up.
No,
are we servicing what we need to service?
I think it'd be wise to do that as well. Sharing that information about some grants that we've been working on. I think I shared this, but I want to make sure I did. The US 460 RAISE grant, we were not successful. There was only one successful grant in the whole state of Kentucky, that was in Frankfort. Now we'll turn our focus to do everything we can to get it in the state road budget for this upcoming year. And that's the construction, utilities, and right-of-way.
What's the amount? Projected amount?
26 million and some change. So we'll start. It's a priority for Senator Thayer shared it's a priority. Representative Pratt as well, and then Kelly Baker and their team. They don't want to build a road halfway.
So will we be working along with the Bourbon senator and representative as well?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir. NTIA, they backed their award date up where we had applied, everybody, national federal grant for broadband dollars. They backed their award up till January. They had said they were going to announce it in December, but they backed their award date up to January just because of the number of applications they got. Just wanted you to be aware of that. We're still waiting. I don't have a date when the state broadband application successful awards will be announced there, but we also have that pending application on broadband as well that Spectrum did for us. John, you might help me answer to this, but it's my understanding that Mike as well, that the cost-benefit analysis did not meet the standard to be able to apply for the generators for the AFG.
That's correct, yes.
So,
Yes.
Mike, you're welcome to share anything, but the cost-benefit analysis was not, it didn't meet the standard to allow us to make that application. Do y'all want to add anything to that?
Just simply that I'm going to mess with the numbers a little bit. You're correct that the cost benefit didn't work the way we're going to do it, but
if we can add in multi-agencies and, you know, change it a little bit. We wrote it as trying to protect fire stations. But, you know, when we start adding in all of the community assistance that would be required, I think we can get the cost benefit to a point where we can.
Okay. The deadline is December 17th to make that
Right, yeah,
application.
I don't think that we'll make it
On this one, we come back second time.
Okay.
But for this deadline, what I want to come back next Friday is get your approval to apply for the AFG for exhaust systems in the stations. Would you add to that?
That's correct. It's a capture system where the pipe that hangs down from the ceiling hooks straight to the exhaust pipe of the trucks. Every morning, the guys are out there firing the trucks up, they're doing their morning daily truck checks. Right now, there is no, only thing they have is something in the ceiling of the station that basically pulls it out. But the problem with that is, while it's going out, they're out there exposed to it. So we initially thought about going after the aerial truck with AFG and found out through the webinar that we would not be successful with that. So that's where we kind of changed gears and now going after the vehicle exhaust capture system.
So I'll come back Friday to formally say we approve us applying for this. There is a match.
Right.
But much needed pieces of equipment. And those would be at each station?
That's correct. All 4 locations that we have.
So
basically it would just be, you know, it's hooked to the truck. As the truck drives out, it releases off the track and pulls off the exhaust. So it's not something that somebody has to manage, you know, it manages itself. But we had a company in 3 or 4 days ago, went around to all the stations. They're going to kind of give us a good estimate on what we'd be looking at for that type of system.
any questions for Mike or John on any of that?
Thank you.
Thanks. The RFQ for the sheriff's office and the EMS station and the, of course, the county clerk's satellite that's within the sheriff's office, the architectural services, that's been advertised, and the deadline for that's December 9th. So we'll see what comes in on December 9th. And then I've met with Marilla this past week. JR and I went out and at the site at Lyle Road, and they're starting work. They're putting in silt fence, and the challenge is getting a temporary, where they're going to put their trailer and getting a temporary electrical connection. There is no electric. Like, I thought for sure there was a light out there. There's a little, but there's no light. There's no electricity there anywhere. And then they had, where at one time that was going to be a subdivision, they had these dummy boxes that you would think that would have electric ran to them, but there's no electric, so they're gonna have to navigate that.
And what part are they doing? I forget.
Lyle Road, the site, all the site prep.
Okay.
Now, what is going on right now is architecture, element design, and Tim Murphy. We met about some value engineering and some cost savings, and on the building, on the actual concession and bathroom. The footprint's going to stay the same, but we're only going to have one story, and we've done a lot of value engineering. Hopefully, we'll be able to cut costs on estimate on that significantly, but they're working on the drawings on that now, so we'll bring that back. The one that we had, I would have put that on the Gulf Coast and not thought it would have blown down in a hurricane. So it was just we can still have a nice facility, but not spend that much money, and that's very hopeful that we can get that back and put it out to bid. With that said, there is a parade Saturday night to welcome in holiday season, Christmas season, and lighting of the Christmas tree, and I think that starts at 6 o'clock. Does any other member of the court have any new business or any questions they'd like to discuss? And does any of our staff here have anything you want to add? With that said, we'll adjourn our workshop then.